Frontline is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Funding for the AIDS Quarterly is provided by a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Resources making a difference in the health care of Americans.
Africa. This is the place where AIDS has hit hardest. This is also where a generation is threatened by the disease.
It's not a joke. AIDS is with us. For anyone who discovers that he is positive, please keep the virus to yourself.
Tonight, the story of a man who had the courage to say what no one wanted to hear, and who found the strength to make one last journey home. Born in Africa.
From the network of public television stations, a presentation of KCTS Seattle, WNET New York, WPBT Miami, WTVS Detroit, and WGBH Boston. This is Frontline with the AIDS Quarterly, a special report.
Good evening, I'm Peter Jennings. 18 months ago, Frontline and the AIDS Quarterly set out to produce a major program about AIDS in Africa. It's a difficult story to report. The facts are hard to get. Officially, more than 40,000 people on the continent have AIDS, but there may be as many as 3 million people infected. Access to the story is very difficult. Our producers, John Zaritsky and Virginia Storning, spent months negotiating with African governments without success. Finally, one country, Uganda, gave us permission to do the reporting, and even then with restrictions. We were not allowed to film inside any hospital, not allowed to film any person with AIDS, although eventually, as you will see, exceptions were made. But our producers were able to come back with the story of a remarkable man who single-handedly made his country confront the AIDS epidemic. We call his story, Born in Africa.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and honor and gratitude to call upon Philly Bongoley Lutaaya in Born in Africa.
In April 1988, Philly Lutaaya returned home after 4 years of political exile in Sweden and instantly became the Bruce Springsteen of Uganda, with a song a new generation embraced as a national anthem.
I was born in Africa, dream and love, reaching Africa.
After 20 years of struggling as a third world musician, Philly Lutaaya had finally reached the pinnacle of his career. He was now Uganda's #1 pop star. The only visual record of Lutaaya's sold-out concert tour was made by a fan using a home video. But his new hit song, Born in Africa, could be heard all across the country. Uganda was once called the Pearl of Africa, a fertile land where no one went hungry. But Uganda has just emerged from a 20-year nightmare of civil war and political murder that killed 1.5 million citizens. The savage regimes of Idi Amin and Milton Obote had also crushed economic and intellectual life. 750,000 Ugandans, including Philly Lutaaya, had fled their homeland. It wasn't until 1986 that peace finally began to settle on Uganda. When Philly Lutaaya returned with his song, it symbolized for Ugandans a reawakening of hope and pride in their country.
I was born to sing.
After his triumphant Born in Africa tour, Lutaaya went back to Sweden to continue his recording career. It was there that the mysterious ailments which had plagued the singer for months were finally diagnosed. He had AIDS.
I was very much afraid. I knew I was in big trouble. I thought about my future, my past, and I felt so alone. I decided to come out, if it is possible for me to launch a campaign, a crusade against AIDS, whereby some my fellow human beings might be saved.
Back in Uganda, Philly's older brother, A.K. Lutaaya, a Kampala businessman and former captain of the national cricket team, was shocked by Philly's plans to go public.
Most people here, when they realize they have run into this sort of problem, the AIDS disease is taken as a harsh matter. When you catch it, you should withdraw from public eyes, and eventually you disappear, you die quietly in some remote corner of some village place.
Nobody knows how many Ugandans have died quietly of AIDS. But in this country of 16 million, an estimated 1 million are now infected with the virus, and at least 10,000 have full-blown AIDS. In Uganda, as elsewhere in Africa, AIDS is primarily a heterosexually transmitted disease, and the infection rate is evenly divided between men and women. Despite the toll, AIDS had been a taboo subject in Uganda, a shameful secret. On April the 13th, 1989, Philly Lutaaya became the first prominent African to publicly declare he had AIDS.
Mike, is your office calling?
Philly's manager in Uganda was Michael Doherty, a Californian who'd settled in Kampala in 1979 during the Civil War. He had married a Ugandan woman, and they had 2 children. Over the years, the expatriate businessman had become one of Philly's closest friends.
We were monitoring the press. It was a bombshell. It was a big story. And the first day was handled with dignity. Uganda's famous musician has declared he's an AIDS victim. The coverage was compassionate. It was straightforward. That was it. However, day 2, day 3, the story changed completely.
Stories appeared in the press that Philly's announcement was just a publicity stunt to promote the sales of his records.
I personally knew that Philly wouldn't lie. He would have left music if he wanted to make money.
Alex Makulu had been Philly's friend for 20 years.
And I know we were together. We used to go without food 1 day, 2 days. But he never left music for money.
At the World Health Organization office in Entebbe, Adjuamana watched the controversy swirling around Philly and saw an opportunity.
In the U.S., you had the Rock Hudson has come out. Many other people who have had the disease came out to talk about it. In Uganda, we have not been fortunate. In fact, on the African scene, we have not been that fortunate to get prominent people to talk about the disease at all in a personal way.
But when Mrs. Amana went to visit Philly, she found him badly shaken by the negative publicity.
And he was really feeling sorry that he had come out to say this. And basically, my message to him was that I'm sorry, it's not enough. That if you want these newspapers' articles to stop, then show them why you declared. Do something.
Today is exceptional because we are privileged for the first time in this country to have a real example of an AIDS victim who has astounded us.
Lutaaya decided to fight back. At Makerere University, the most prestigious in East Africa, he put his case.
I stand before you a living example
of an AIDS victim. I have AIDS and have been told that my days are numbered. I beg you, give AIDS victims love and understanding. Don't desert us. Remember, if you do not take care, you too will soon be joining the ranks of the AIDS victims.
The speech was risky. Philly's advisors feared he would encounter skepticism and even hostility. But the audience of 5,000 students listened silently. Instead, he got respect.
AIDS is here, but people wanted always to ignore it and pretend as if it was not here. So I wanted to go on shouting loud about this crisis. I ignored people who were calling me a liar, people who were calling me an opportunist. I knew time would come when they would understand.
Put your tongue out and to the left. Good.
Philly had returned to Sweden, but his health was now deteriorating quickly. Dr. Per Olaf Persson.
He had severe headache, he had severe diarrhea, was losing weight, he had fever, and he also started to get problems with his legs and feet, feeling some sort of numbness, and got sores on his soles, and that made it very difficult for him to walk.
That's good. You can take a cloak.
He has also been shown to have disseminated tuberculosis, with tuberculosis not only in the lungs but also in the lymph glands and in the blood. And now, during the summer of 1989, it has been shown that he also has this cytomegalovirus infection. So in fact, he has had at least five infections or tumors that are included in the definition of AIDS.
It had been 6 months now since Philly's AIDS diagnosis. Despite his physical condition, he was anxious to get back to his music. In a Stockholm recording studio, he started to work on what would become the most important song of his life.
Let's go.
Well, I wanted to put something down, something musical, artistic, about my feelings and about the feelings of what I thought were the feelings of other AIDS patients. The feeling of helplessness, the feeling of loneliness. I wanted to express what I felt within myself.
And so, today it's me, tomorrow's someone else.
Philly ignored his doctor's advice. He worked round the clock, 2 months of grueling recording sessions to perfect the song he called Alone.
Yeah, I knew. I felt I was racing against the clock, but it was a matter of time. I had work to be done. There was work to be done, and I had to do it.
Out there somewhere, alone and frightened. Oh, the darkness, the days are long. Life in hiding, now more making new contacts. No more loving arms thrown around my neck.
Take my hand now.
The recording sessions took their toll. By August 1989, Philly was confined to bed in a Stockholm hospital. He could no longer stand because of open sores on the soles of his feet. But he was determined to return to Uganda, to carry the message in his new AIDS song. Philly had agreed to let us film his journey so his story could reach an international audience. Unexpectedly, the Ugandan government rejected Philly's request that he be accompanied by a Western film crew.
Having been barred from being filmed in Uganda had made me more depressed, and I was down. But I really don't feel that the people of Uganda could do that to me. But this is one of the things which happened to us small people. We are frustrated always by the big ones, and they forget that they were once small also.
Philly appealed to Uganda's Prime Minister Samson Kiseka. Philly wrote that getting his AIDS message to the world was his dying wish. A few weeks later, the Ugandan government approved the plan to film. But by now, Philly's doctors feared he might never be able to return to Uganda.
A couple of weeks ago, he said that I can't even go to the toilet. I have to take the wheelchair to the toilet because my feet, they are extremely painful. I thought when I saw him a couple of weeks ago that he should never be able to stand on his feet and legs again.
I'm a strong man. I don't believe in being weak or anything. When I decide to do something, I decide to do it.
Philly had vowed that he would not return to Uganda until he could stand on his own 2 feet. In late September 1989, after 6 weeks in a hospital bed, Philly walked again.
3 weeks ago, I thought this would be impossible. It's not due to a lot of drugs. It's mostly due to his will to fight the disease.
But I feel I'm getting my strength back.
Yeah.
And I'm, of course, I'm a little excited. But I'm going to Uganda.
Yeah,
yes.
You have to.
I wouldn't dare to talk about the prognosis in terms of months or years with Philly, because he has proven that he can live much longer than we thought from the beginning.
So, Philly, how do you feel mentally now?
Mentally, I just feel the same. I'm the same man, the same thoughts, and even creating even new songs right now.
You do?
Yes.
Yeah.
The next day, he returned to his Stockholm apartment. A single father, he had custody of his 3 children, Tina, 14, Tezzy, 13, and 7-year-old son John Lennon Lutaaya, named after Philly's musical hero.
In my situation, I always feel that in most of the things I do, there are things I do, and I feel that it might be my last time to do such things.
The schedule for Philly's return to Uganda meant he would have only this one day at home with his children.
I always miss my kids whenever I'm away from them. But, well, this was a call for duty, and there are always sacrifices which one must take in this world.
Good evening. Here is the news read by Canary Widsha. First at the main points. Renowned Ugandan musician Philly Bongoley Lutaaya is back home. Lutaaya is expected to launch his latest album entitled Alone and Frightened, in which he calls for a collective struggle against AIDS in order to protect those not yet affected.
What Ugandans didn't know was that during the flight from Stockholm, the government had withdrawn its permission for us to film Philly's activities in Uganda. There was no official explanation for the last-minute reversal, but Philly's supporters thought they knew why a Western film crew was not welcome.
The openness with which Ugandan government had approached the whole AIDS problem also brought about a lot of abuse of that hospitality, that openness by foreign press, who came in here and tore the place apart in terms of Uganda is the AIDS capital of the world or of Africa. Uganda is this, all Ugandans have AIDS. Ugandans going out of the country have been subjected to all kinds of humiliations.
Health Minister Zach Kahuru led the opposition. In a letter, the minister explained that since Philly had lived in Sweden for 5 years, he should not be presented to the world as a Ugandan AIDS case.
You see, this is the Minister of Health, and under him we have the AIDS control program and other experts. Honestly, surely should have been following enough to know what schoolboys now don't know. 10-year-olds know that AIDS can be, in your system for up to 10 years. And this is the myopic approach to AIDS, in our backwardness. Instead of facing the issue, we are actually interested in finding out where somebody got the AIDS, contact.
Dr. Ronald Batta, the Minister of State for Health, believed Philly's visit could have a critical impact on the future of the AIDS epidemic. Dr. Batta knew the projections for Uganda. In the 90s, the number of cases would increase dramatically.
I'm quite sure we're even talking now. Some uninformed Ugandans are making love somewhere. One of them could be positive, another is negative. The disease is being transmitted. So me, I felt that I could come and diffuse this situation for us. That's why I supported him. For 2 reasons: my medical profession, which says we should support all patients, even if you know he's going to die tomorrow. And number 2 is my interest and the bleak projection of future in the 1990s. Yes, I've told you, this case you are seeing is just a chicken stuff. The biggest lot will come in the 1990s. So we are trying to break the transmission. And I think Lutaaya has done it for us.
Scaring off?
No, just sort of.
2 days after our arrival, as Philly dressed for the ceremony to launch his AIDS album, there was some good news. The Ugandan government had decided it would allow the documentary to be made, and to show its support, the Prime Minister would speak at the ceremony.
Physically, I feel tired, but I feel spiritually I'm very much revived just by the fact that we're going to do our film. So my tiredness is likely to go up in the air.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's ceremony centers on Ugandan musician Philly Bongoley Lutaaya. Lutaaya declared in April of this year that he is an AIDS victim. It was a courageous move from this young man who has struggled a good number of years to develop a respectable musical career. Just at the time when the fruits of his labors were beginning to bear, fate steps in and deals him this terrible blow. Philly, the government of Uganda appreciates your efforts.
Right, Honorable Prime Minister, I would like to thank you and the government of Uganda for allowing me to meet one of my final goals, and it will enable me to talk to the entire world before I die. I composed this album with the hope that AIDS victims might find a few moments of solace and comfort from the music and my innermost feelings. The album alone might also make the healthy population of Uganda realize the importance of giving AIDS victims love and understanding. This album I have produced is a labor of love. In my condition, the recording sessions nearly killed me, but I couldn't let up because a loan had to be completed as my legacy to Uganda and the world.
Let's be open, advise the young ones, a new generation to protect and love. Hear them singing of love.
That night, in Philly's old neighborhood bar in Kampala, Ugandans celebrated his homecoming and listened to his new song for the first time. In the city, where up to 35% of Philly's age group are HIV positive, alone had a powerful effect.
Speak out, not just to sing happy songs. I feel like someone who represents common man's status when I talk about such issues. It made me happy to bring out what other people could not bring out from within themselves.
In Uganda, over half the population is illiterate. Music is often the best way to get the message across. Alone was an instant hit in Kampala, but in order to ensure its success in the countryside, where 80% of the population live, Philly and two musician friends decided to translate the song into Ugandan.
Today,
Here, on the shores of Lake Victoria, Philly found time to relax at a picnic with his friends and family. His mother, Justine Lutaaya, a retired headmistress of a primary school, had stood by her son from the time he first got sick. In the early 1980s, as AIDS was becoming a real epidemic, ignorance and fear of the disease were high. AIDS severely tested the traditional, loving and supportive African family. Many Ugandans with AIDS weren't as lucky as Philly Lutaaya.
A lot of families were confused. They didn't know what this new disease was. As you know, a lot of our people believe in witchcraft, others don't, and so on. So when a new disease came out, where there was no information about it, they were caught between their own safety and the love to take care of their relatives. And of course, personal safety always came first. And some of them sacrificed their dignity in abandoning their relatives for their own safety.
Noreen Kaliba remembers the stigma and the isolation her family experienced during the years her husband Chris was dying of AIDS. He had contracted AIDS from a blood transfusion.
The minute it is even discussed that one might have AIDS, their morality is on the table. And therefore, and morality is one that Ugandans essentially hold dear. Majority of Ugandans are essentially God-fearing people, and immorality is not associated with God-fearing people. Therefore, the first question that springs to one's mind is, I must keep this. People must not know, because if they know, they associate me with immorality.
Shortly after her husband's death in 1986, Mrs. Kaliba founded one of Africa's first self-help groups for people with AIDS and their families. Today, the AIDS Support Organization, or TASO as it's called, provides medical and counseling services for 300 clients in Kampala and has branches in 2 other Ugandan towns.
Once HIV enters your house, it never leaves. Even if the individual who is physically infected dies, but the stigma lives. And for quite some time, the children of that family, the people that are closely associated will have, people will whisper about this particular individual.
TASO provides food and clothing for its clients and jobs for those unable to work. But it is one of the only support groups in Uganda and can help only a tiny fraction of those in need.
We accept that at least for the time being, there is no cure. But at the same time, we accept and we feel quite compelled to propagate the concept that despite there not being a cure, AIDS is treatable.
You watch. Pause.
The knowledge that one is infected or that one has an illness of the magnitude of AIDS cannot be borne by oneself. One requires a lot of support, and this is what this counseling is about.
Come this way.
A group of TASO clients and their counselors, a few of whom are uninfected volunteers, wanted to meet Lutaaya. During his hospitalization in Stockholm, Philly was isolated from other AIDS patients because of Swedish laws to protect the patient's privacy. And so on this day in Uganda, he would meet, for the first time, other people with AIDS.
What would you say to all of us here about this stigma?
This stigma put to this infection is caused by ignorance. That's why I say that the population needs more and more education about AIDS. And people are so afraid. They are afraid.
Yeah.
So even sometimes if they keep away from you, you don't blame them. Yes. I don't blame anyone who tries to do like this, It's natural. It took me a long time. I did not want to see anyone who is HIV positive or who has AIDS. I didn't know what I will see. I didn't know what I will see, and then it could make me feel worse.
How did you get the courage to continue working after being told that you were positive? Were you cancelled by someone, or it was just a self-determination?
The first and the last time I was cancelled was when I was told the result of my blood test, because I had gone to the clinic for something entirely different. And then they suspected that there was something. And then they asked me if I wanted to take a test, because it's not compulsory. I said, let me take the test. So when they told me the result was positive, it was then when there was this counseling.
Were you shocked when you were told?
Yes, I was shocked. Yeah. Anyone will be, because most people think that no, they can't get AIDS. When you are told you are sick, that you are HIV positive, or that you have AIDS, you must know that you can still be very useful to society, to your nation, and to yourself. It's not good just to give up and raise your hands and say, okay, now let me just wait to die. You might wait for 5 years.
Yes.
As I told you before, that I fell victim in 1987. And since then, I've been with TASO, and I'm very happy with them. They are taking care of me, and they are taking care of my entire family. I don't regret at all. And I'm very happy to meet you for the first time, and I pray very much to God that He keeps you alive and fit. Thank you very much, Philly.
I don't think I could do what Philly is doing. I believe in inner powers. He must have inner power, because looking at him, you can see he's really frail, and he's reached a level where most people that I've worked with in the last 2 years will just throw their arms up and say, no. But to do what he's doing, I don't know. If I were to put to the test, I don't know whether I could really do it. I could have the energy in me to do it. I think it is tremendous.
Dede Majoro and Philly Lutaaya had been friends since they were 6 years old. In between Philly's official appearances, they found time to reminisce about their struggles as young musicians.
Our parents saw musicians, guitars are taboo, Nightclubs were out of bounds, things like that. So anything associated with nightclub to our parents was out. For someone's son to be a musician those days,
1969.
Jesus, it was like losing the fellow, And it's still a good song, incidentally. Yes. I think he found the only way he could express himself was through music. That's why his songs are always different. There's something unique about Philly's songs. He never was into this music where you sing about love all the time, girls' names and all that. No. Say in about 10 songs you could find one love song, things like that. Everything else was a comment, his view of day-to-day problems people are facing.
After a week in Kampala, Philly went back to his native village of Gomba, a tough 3-hour drive from the capital. Gomba's a conservative agricultural community, and it had reacted skeptically to Philly's announcement 5 months earlier. Philly's family had lived here for 45 years. His mother is a leading member of the local church, but Gomba didn't believe her son had AIDS. The last time Philly had been home, he was in the early stages of AIDS and appeared healthy.
I see people coming nearer to look at me as if they don't believe it's me, yet now they believe, they know that I'm in big trouble, but there's nothing they can do, or nothing I can do about it.
Most of the people who have seen Philly believe, they quite agree, yes, he has AIDS. Although I've met fellows in the crowds, who still doubt, and they say, look, haven't you seen Hugh Brainer, actor, without hair? No? Philly's hair is like that. It's deliberate. It's been bleached, or, whatever it is. After he goes back to Sweden, 2 months, the hair will grow back, and the fellow has earned his money.
In fact, I have to confess, because I was among the people who were not really sure whether Philly was telling us the truth. I was thinking that, well, he only wanted to announce. Maybe he had been given something from somewhere to announce that. But just today, I have realized what Philly announced is true.
Over the years, the village of Gomba had experienced many anonymous AIDS deaths. But Philly had now given the disease a public face, and the community gathered to embrace its prodigal son. In the church where Philly had been baptized, a special prayer service was held in his honor.
We are so pleased this morning for having our dear mother, Mama Lutaaya, to be here with Philly and the whole family, having come here to pray with us. Here is a man who is confronted by all that he's confronted with: death, attack of enemies, anxiety, fear of anything, and yet before him there is a great and powerful and great God. The God he looks at, the God he looks to, the God he cries to, and he answers. This is the God I believe my brother Philly has known.
Omuzadde bwakkiriza omwana wange kyangu tebakkiriza n'obuwombeefu. Omuzadde bw'alwaza omwana anoga eddagala n'anaaza ku mwana we oba n'akola kinakola ki. Ndwadde gye nnina nze ntunula butunuzi nga sina na ddagala lyonna lyensobola okuwa omwana oyo wabula essaala yokka gye nsaba eri Katonda. Nammwe bannange mbasaba mwongere okusabira omwana amwoyo.
The next day, in Kampala, the headlines were not about Philly's poignant return home. In a front-page article, an African-language newspaper reported that on his way back from Gamba, Philly had secretly visited a traditional healer who treated him with an expensive cure for AIDS. Concerned that thousands of Ugandans might be duped by false reports of a miracle treatment, Philly called a news conference to deny the reports and set the record straight.
Mr. Philly Lutaaya, today's issue of Ngabo carried a story that you have received treatment from a traditional healer. Do you have any response to that story?
It is a serious crime against humanity to so blatantly mislead the Ugandan people. False reports like this only confuse the people and hamper our battle against AIDS. Medical experts in Uganda and the world over have proven at this time that there is simply no cure for AIDS. Instead of misleading people, we need to stand together and fight AIDS with proper information on prevention, and we must look after the AIDS victim amongst us. We must avoid cheap reporting.
Mr. Lutaaya, you noted that in Ngabo, that article really seemed directed to you, and you seemed to be very bitter about it. What advice really would you give to these people, to other Ugandans, most especially AIDS victims who might, be taken by such talk in town?
We are free people living in a free state where everyone is free to follow his or her own beliefs. I'm not going to tell, all AIDS sufferers that don't go to be healed by that woman or that man. See? But I don't believe them. I don't believe in these cures. Others are, many people have come to me telling me, go, there's a juju man here, this man is, go there, go there. Okay, I'm very concerned about their concern, they want me to be healed. But I don't believe in such traditional medicine. I don't know, I don't think it can help me, though I want to be healed.
Do you have any inkling as to when, where, and from whom you may have contracted this disease? Thank you.
I don't. I am not the one to back up, even if it is the most serious, even the last crisis in my life. I'm not prepared to throw in the towel at all. I'll go on fighting, I'll go on expressing the views I believe in, and I'll go on trying to help the people in informing them and trying to answer their queries and everything, so that we may keep this epidemic from spreading.
Uganda had AIDS. We call it SLIM. And SLIM is with us and among us. And it's only Lutaaya that had accepted
to show us that it's here and it's up to us to know how to handle it. I'm sure
The chairman of the National Council of Ugandan Women, Victoria Sabarika, had invited Philly to address an international conference on women's health care. But she ran into opposition from some delegates from other African countries who had never seen a person with AIDS before.
when I suggested that Lutaaya comes and talks to us, some members felt it would scare our guests. But I hope and I trust that you bear with me that for him it's a big thing to carry, but he's not carrying it for his own sake. He's carrying it for us, for you and me, and for the coming generation.
In Uganda, 50% of the AIDS victims are women. Women in Uganda, in Africa, must join the battle against AIDS. When we talk about the battle against AIDS, we must forget blame. Blame is not productive. I know that I contracted the virus from a woman, but I don't blame that woman. That woman was definitely given the virus by a man.
I feel women are more cautious and are trying to be as safe, to keep themselves as safe as possible. But with our culture, which we are trying to change gradually, women have in the past been very submissive to their husbands. You don't know who your husband has been with. He comes, you just have to accept whatever he tells you to do. But now I think if a woman, especially an enlightened woman, knows that her husband has been unfaithful, she'll do everything possible not to have anything to do with him until both of them are checked.
Changes must be made in our sexual behavior. For the past years, we have been so free in our sexual behavior. Adultery is a serious threat to all of us, and it must stop. Adultery by either sex presents a danger to the other partner and ultimately to the whole family. If we don't work hard, the human race is going to die.
The young generation think it's a myth, and they think it's very far, it's very far from them. They think AIDS affect only grown-ups. And my concern is to sensitize and to try and tell the youngsters that it's their age group that is more affected than the 35 and above.
Do not be afraid, I am with you.
The Ugandan government is focusing its AIDS education effort on the 5 to 15-year age group, which is still virus-free. From primary school to university, all Ugandan students are regularly instructed about AIDS prevention. But schools across the country were inviting Philly because they knew that he would have an impact on students that they would not forget.
I want to welcome all our visitors to Gayaza High School. We are the oldest girls' school in Uganda and proud of it, but particularly today we want to welcome Mr. Philly Lutaaya. We are so grateful that he has given up this time to come and share with us and allow us to sing along with him. Mr. Lutaaya, you are very welcome to Gayaza High School.
I wish I was just on an ordinary visit here, as I used to come and visit my sister here some years ago. But today I have come to stand before you as a living example of an AIDS victim. This is serious. I never wanted this to happen to me. So, straightforward, I would like to tell you that I would not like this to happen to you, to any of you. The message I would like to give to you is that let us do our best to have a virus-free young generation. It's easy to avoid getting the virus. I beseech you that please be careful in the way you handle yourselves. We need you.
I wanted to know what made you decide to tell the world that you had AIDS, because most AIDS victims don't let it out.
I wanted people, having seen me, to know that AIDS can affect anyone, not only the poor peasants, not only the rich Maftamingi, not only the prostitute, but it's in all classes.
What was the reaction of your family for knowing that you've got AIDS, and what have you done to help them understand?
My eldest daughter cried. My second daughter did not cry. She's a tough girl. And my young son, who is only 7 years old, didn't understand what was going on. But when I came and told my mother and my brothers and sister here in Uganda, they were shocked. They asked me, are you going to take it? I mean, this, when I told them that I'm going to go public and tell the people. I said I will take it, I can take it. So, they have been with me all the way.
On behalf of all the girls at Gaza High School, we'd like to thank Philly Bongoley Lutaaya, and we are very grateful for your presence, for your presence here at school. And would like to say we love you. And as a token of our love, we have this small gift for you. Please receive it.
Thank you very much.
The highest rate of HIV infection in Uganda is found among women aged 18 to 24. If they are poor and unemployed, they are particularly vulnerable.
Many older men are having relationship with younger women because they feel that women their own age group are already infected. And so they go after the younger one. So you may have a situation where one man may be infecting a few of these young women. If a woman doesn't have enough to eat and or doesn't have enough money to get all the nice clothing and things that she needs, and a man can offer it to her, a lot of these young women will go for it. This is the key message that we're passing on to women, be it rural or urban, that whatever you're doing, be proud of it. Earn a living for yourself, because one mistake can end your life.
At his headquarters in the Kampala Sheraton, Philly was receiving hundreds of requests from Ugandans who wanted to meet him in person. One special request was from Philly's travel coordinator, Eddie Masoki, whose brother Vincent was dying of AIDS and wanted to meet his idol. Vincent had endured a difficult 2-hour journey from his village, where he'd been a school teacher. As they talked, Philly discovered they were the same age, but that Vincent had been sick for 2 years longer.
When I see my fellow victims
It's just like looking at myself. I know they have gone through things I've gone through. Unluckily, no one has ever told us what experience it is to die. But if you know that you're going to die, it would have better, one not brood so much. Of course, you regret the friends you're leaving behind, this life. I mean, the material things in the world. But you cannot just put on a sad mask and say that I'm going to die. You know, that's my opinion. I would try to live a happy life as much as possible.
Philly Lutaaya turned 38 on October the 19th, 1989. Before the party, he had privately discussed the arrangements with his brother, AK.
He said, look here, if you can ask my friends, tell everybody, let them not pity me, see? Let us be friends. When we go to a party, let's drink and enjoy ourselves in the short time we have.
With Philly, it's very difficult to cry, you know. Even now at home, he's sick, he has pain in the legs, but he still comes and gives you just one line of a joke and you feel good, you know. You feel ashamed to kind of feel sad in his face because he's not.
Netufuna ekintu ekyajjidde mu dda chala.
In one way, it was the best birthday I ever had in my life. I was in company of so many friends whom I had not seen for a long time. Myself, I was a little sad because sad and happy. For I had not known whether I would make it to be 38. I've been sick, seriously sick, on and off. And yet, well, I made it. I became 38 years old. And, well, I kept thinking, am I going to celebrate another birthday?
I'd like to introduce a very special guest artist tonight, ladies and gentlemen. My friend, my colleague, Philly Bongoley Lutaaya.
My fans have made me what I am by appreciating my music. They have made me the biggest star in Uganda.
Since his arrival in Uganda 2 weeks earlier, Philly's fans had been clamoring for him to perform once again. Finally, in an old nightclub haunt, Philly sang a new song he had written about Kampala.
I like Kampala. It's a beautiful town, it's a beautiful city, and I really admire the inhabitants of Kampala, the Ugandans who come from different tribes, different corners of Uganda, and they live together. They've been struggling during the difficult times we've had in our nation. And I wanted to pay tribute to the city of Kampala and its inhabitants. Also, this song, Kampala, was addressed partly to people who have immigrated from Uganda, who are living abroad. And I was telling them, Tugende e Kampala, let's go to Kampala. Let's go back to our town, to our country. Everything is now okay. Let's come and build our country again. So I wanted to sing to the audience, Tugende Kampala, and I'm trying to tell them that people are coming back to Kampala. And that very foot has just gone down. It was very swollen, the whole of it.
Philly's feet and legs were still bothering him, but 2 Ugandan doctors had refused to treat him. They were afraid to touch an AIDS patient. Finally, a compassionate physiotherapist volunteered to help. Philly's experience with the doctors was not uncommon, and the problem was on his mind when he appeared before medical students at Makerere University, Uganda's only medical school.
I have been told that some doctors in Uganda need to be educated and sensitized towards AIDS patients. At first, I did not believe this. I'm sorry to say that it is true. I know I had to look around just to get physiotherapy when I arrived here from Sweden. In the future, each one of you will have to deal with AIDS on a professional or at least a personal level. Treating AIDS patients is not just giving out drugs and going away. It requires a commitment from medical practitioners. I have been told that over the last 20 years, about 75% of the Ugandan trained doctors have left the country to work in foreign lands. The demand for doctors in some foreign countries is high, so the temptation must be great. But I would ask you to think of Uganda first. Statistics show that there is 1 doctor for every 37,000 persons in our country. You are needed by your fellow Ugandans. So, do not walk out on us. Thank you.
A shortage of doctors is only one of several crises facing the Ugandan healthcare system. Its hospitals are crumbling and overcrowded. Most AIDS patients will die without ever being hospitalized. Drugs and basic medical equipment are in short supply. The Ugandan government can afford to spend less than $2 per person annually on health care. For AIDS patients, that means that life-prolonging drugs like AZT are simply not available. Uganda cannot even afford the major weapon in the battle to prevent AIDS, the condom. Although some soldiers, university students, and some people with AIDS get free condoms, the government doesn't have the foreign currency to buy condoms from abroad in large numbers.
A lot of people, I think probably about 1% of our population, actually know what is a condom. So if you engage in a massive condom supply and education, it means educating literally the whole population about it.
When Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni came to power in 1986, he faced the task of rebuilding a country whose economy and infrastructure was in ruins. 10% of the population had been killed during the 20 years of civil war. AIDS was just one more challenge in a devastated land. But Museveni soon recognized the disease might become the greatest threat to his nation's survival. And so the Ugandan president became one of the first African leaders to openly acknowledge the AIDS epidemic and understand that the only effective weapon a poor country has is public education. He has waged an all-out campaign to change Ugandan sexual behavior. His message: love faithfully and stick to one partner. In Uganda, 92% of the population regularly attends places of worship. And so the country's mosques and churches have become important allies in the president's campaign against AIDS. The Kabuli Mosque in Kampala extended a special invitation to Lutaaya, who is not a Muslim, to come and speak. AIDS poses a special danger to Muslims and traditional African societies where polygamy is a widely accepted practice. Philly told his audience that he himself had relatives with 2 or 3 wives, and he felt there was nothing wrong with that as long as all the partners remained faithful to one another. Sex education for Muslim youngsters is not normally encouraged by religious elders. But Philly said that during the current AIDS crisis, teaching innocent children about the disease and its dangers had to become everybody's priority.
Oh.
King's College is an exclusive private school established in 1912 to educate Ugandan royalty. And today it still teaches the children who will become the leaders of tomorrow. When Philly Lutaaya, grandson of a Ugandan chief, returned to his former school, it was clear that he regarded his campaign against AIDS as an act of patriotism.
Don't ever forget that you are Africans. You are people who were born in Africa, and you must be very proud of being an Africans. Always identify yourself wherever you may go. Identify yourselves as true Africans, the sons and the daughters of our grandfathers who built the glory and the honor on which we are walking now. And when I love Uganda most because it's my motherland. I see myself. I must be very loyal and give all I want to Uganda. I have found that I always miss Uganda, and I'm always very homesick when I am away from Uganda. So I decided to give my life to Uganda.
As the campaign entered its fourth week, Uganda's acceptance of Philly Lutaaya had become almost universal. But at the country's most important church, Namarimbi Cathedral, there was still resistance.
Namarimbi Cathedral is the seat of the Church of Uganda. By and large, the pillars of the diocese are quite conservative. There were quite a few people in the hierarchy, so to speak, didn't want Philly to speak. They didn't want him to sing. They didn't want his music played inside the cathedral. They thought it was a sacrilege or something.
But Bishop Mzere Kauma, Uganda's most powerful religious leader, had been an early supporter of Philly's campaign, and he was determined that Namarimbi Cathedral would honor him.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
May the Lord give you the strength you need.
But I must admit that Bishop Kauma had the courage to face all the opposition. You know, you can imagine standing up against the current, saying, no, this has to be done.
On a Sunday in late October, Philly was invited to address the congregation. And he was also permitted to sing a spiritual song he had written called Tumizinzi, Let Us Worship Him. Later, Bishop Kauma would urge that Philly's spiritual song, Tumizinzi, should be adopted as an official hymn in the Church of Uganda. After the triumph of Namarimbi Cathedral, Philly went straight to the funeral of a close friend and fellow musician, Billy Mutebi.
I lost a work comrade as well as a friend. He's been sick for almost 2 years, but we played together in Africa. He was my band leader, so he was my right-hand man as far as musical activities in Uganda were concerned.
Have you lost many friends to AIDS, though?
Yes, I've lost more than 5 friends. But the thing is that most of them, they have died of AIDS, not believing it was AIDS. They'll just say that so-and-so has died after a long illness or fever or diarrhea or such things, but not, they don't like to say AIDS.
Philly embarked on his final mission into the Ugandan countryside on a government-supplied helicopter that took him into a remote rural area along the shores of Lake Victoria called Rakai. The Rakai district is where AIDS first struck the country in 1982. It's the area hardest hit by the epidemic. With HIV infection rates as high as 70%, there are now villages which have become virtual ghost towns. The death toll has been enormous. No Rakai family has escaped the epidemic.
My family also, I've got 4 children have died. 4 children have died, and also I've got my 2 people, my brothers. There are 2 also have died. Of AIDS, of course.
In Rakai, there are now communities populated almost entirely by the young and the old. AIDS has virtually wiped out the middle-aged generation. Today in Rakai, 2 out of 5 children are AIDS orphans, and many cannot even afford the few shillings for their fees to go to school. When Philly last played in one of the many nightclubs in Chotela, Rakai's main trading center, it was during the early stages of the epidemic. The town was a busy commercial stop on the Trans-African Highway.
There is less, nightclub life, and because in those days people were so free, drivers, were making that stop. And there were a lot of prostitutes around, a lot of girls, but now it's a kind of a lonely place.
Now AIDS has virtually cut Chotela off from the rest of Uganda. Today, outside visitors are a rare sight.
Our dear visitors, you are welcome today on this big and special feast. We thank the Lord who has brought you here for this big and special feast. Our dear Philly, you are welcome today.
23,000 children in Rakai have already been orphaned by AIDS. Philly urged the children to learn where their ancestors had come from so that their family's tradition and history would not disappear forever. As he had done everywhere, Philly urged the people of Rakai not to condemn the dying, but to give people with AIDS compassion and love. After his speech, a group of local musicians asked Philly to listen to a song they had written about AIDS.
Kino kyajjirira bajeemu n'abenzi n'abakozi b'effujjo bwe kituuse kitamye kubanga kizingiramu abaana kisaanya bato baabuweema bujja gatamanyi byansi eno kiyitira mu mabeere g'abazadde ne kigguka mwana ne mu mpiso ng'eyo bw'ogimu kuba kikwatiramu omwana tusabe tutya essaala y'okukiwona tusaanawo yamba bambi taata.
Philly was stunned. The song condemned people with AIDS for their immorality. It was the very attitude he'd been campaigning to change. It left him wondering whether the shame of AIDS would ever end.
Just because you had sex with a lady and then you got infected or such thing, I don't think one should need to be ashamed of it. It's just the natural course of events. But people don't like to be identified with AIDS. That's that.
Despite the ravages of Rukai, in most rural areas of Uganda, where 80% of the population lives, HIV infection rates are still relatively low, and that gives health officials a reason to hope.
We can save the country because out of 34 districts, only 2 districts are pretty bad. The rest, it's still very much an urban problem. And so I feel that the earlier the speed with which we can control from spreading heavily into the rural areas, the impact there will not be heavy at all.
But in Uganda, as it is across Africa, the health of the countryside is threatened by the movement of traffic in and out of the more heavily infected cities. During the early stages of the epidemic, armies moved back and forth across Uganda. Today, the Trans-African Highway, which runs through the country from Kenya to Zaire, is regarded by health experts as a virtual pipeline for AIDS. Recently, a large Kampala trucking firm reported that 35% of its drivers were HIV infected. In Jinja, Uganda's second largest city, Lutaaya addressed a restless crowd of truck drivers. It was the most hostile audience of his campaign, but the heckling didn't stop him.
I've got no secrets. I've got nothing to hide. So I speak out whatever I feel that will help someone else. That's how I was brought up. I never go into trouble by speaking the truth. So I've kept it that way.
It was my wish that for the rest of the time I have left, I will try to speak to people whenever I can, whenever I have any strength.
Philly Lutaaya's campaign was now in its 28th day. His health was failing, and his doctors told him he must return to Sweden for further treatment.
Don't desert the victims. Try to give them good morale, try to give them support, because it's a painful experience when you know that everything is finished, when you know that all your dreams might never come true. For anyone who discovers that he is positive, please keep the virus to yourself. Don't kill other people.
Lutaaya is a very forceful character and dedicated to his nation. He has made tremendous contribution in this fight. We regard him as the greatest Ugandan health educator on AIDS. From what I've just told you, he's a hero. Handfuls of Ugandans have died of AIDS quietly. But Lutaaya has taken a different direction. He's a hero.
To honor their hero, 500 supporters from every segment of Ugandan society held a candlelight vigil on the grounds of the Kampala Sheraton. During the past 4 weeks, Philly had traveled the length and breadth of his homeland. He had reached the hearts and minds of a nation.
Alone and frightened, oh, the darkness, the days are long.
He brought this from out of a textbook, out of theory into reality, for the public to see him, see his family close by, to see his friends close by, and that it's all right. It's all right to have AIDS. It's not the end of the world.
Give me love, give me hope.
The ease with which he handled it, the courage which he showed, gave me personally a lot of strength.
All I need is love and understanding.
Lutaaya's being in Uganda has helped a lot of people not to always
connect AIDS with immorality, not to look for faults who brought it, not to blame, but it has taught the Ugandans that one has to be very human to the AIDS victim.
In times of joy, in times of sorrow.
Anywhere you talk about Philly, they no longer look down upon him as, you know, an outcast. Or everybody is in love with him right now. Everybody.
And speak out to the world, will say some lies, say that children of the world.
After people have seen him, there is a general feeling of quiet, a general feeling of someone needs to reflect. It's as if they are actually seeing AIDS with a face.
Let me open, advise the young ones, a new generation to protect and love. Hear them singing, playing, laughing. Let's give them everything in truth and love.
This is only the beginning. The end is not in sight yet. People will come out and contribute to the fight and until we reach total victory. Long time after my times, people are going to continue.
In the end, as in the beginning, the fans came first for Philly Lutaaya. 70,000 people jammed into Kampala's Nakivubo Stadium to see him perform for the last time. It was the largest concert audience in Uganda's history.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bongoley was born in Africa, and he is proud of being an African. And so now he's going to sing to us, Born in Africa.
Hello, hello. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm giving you the last song. I would like to tell you that I'm going back to Europe on Saturday, but I'll be back in Uganda in December. And if God wishes, I shall stage a concert at Lugogo Indoor Stadium. Thank you very much.
On October the 28th, 1989, Philly returned to Sweden, where he was reunited with his children. Philly clung tenaciously to life. But after 3 weeks in Stockholm, he knew it was time to go home again. Strapped on a stretcher, he was flown to Uganda. On December the 15th, 1989, he was given his last wish, to die in Africa. At his funeral in Amarimbi Cathedral, thousands of people mourned him. Uganda's religious and political leaders eulogized him as a shining example of the best in mankind. Philly Lutaaya preferred a simpler epitaph.
I was born to sing, to dance, and I will die a musician. That's enough for me.
Music is the topic today. Let us throw
By special arrangement, operators at the National AIDS Hotline are standing by to answer questions, to refer you to resources in your area, or to provide additional information. Call toll-free 1-800-342-AIDS. This program was produced by WGBH Boston, which is solely responsible for its content. Frontline is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Funding for the AIDS Quarterly is provided by a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Resources making a difference in the health care of Americans. For videocassette information about this program, please write to this address,